Hello and welcome back to McKillop Library Online. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use the library catalog to find ebooks on your Activist and the database America History and Life to find relevant scholarly articles. Just a quick overview if you haven't used the library website before, we have a general search bar in the middle that you can use to search for books. You'll also see that you can change the tabs up here if you wanted to search for articles, videos, and then we currently have also a tab option for searching for ebooks due to our current health crisis. Usually to find ebooks, what you would want to do is use the books tab, and then once you got your results, you would just go in there and filter to just have the ebooks show up. However, we're going to go ahead and we'll use the ebooks tab option today because that's just going to make things so much easier for us. If you go down below here, you'll see that there's an option for the catalog. This is actually the same thing as a search bar, so you don't have to use that unless you desperately want to. You have an option to look at our databases A through Z. You could search for specific journal titles, and then there's also an option here where you can search for research guides. These are set up by subject, so you might find some of these to be useful to you during your time at Salve and specifically during this time of remote learning. So know that those are there for you for all kinds of classes. Go back to our homepage. The last thing I want to point out here is our chat box. So on the right here, you'll see that there's an Ask a Librarian feature. If you had any questions about your research or you needed any help about library services, you could type a question in here and a librarian would respond to you. All right, so let's get started. Let's go ahead and go to our search box under ebooks. And I'm going to have us do a search for Bobby Seale. I saw him speak at an event a couple years ago and he was really fantastic. So I'm excited to see what resources we have on him. So I'm just going to press enter. And it looks like we have 4 books that show up that refer to Bobby Seale in them. And actually, if you look at this first one, it looks like he's one of the authors on it. So once you get a list like this, what you can do is you could select to come into this specific book. And if you go to the view description, this is going to give you information about when it was published. If you scroll down, it's also going to give you a summary. Sometimes there's also chapters that are listed as well, so you can see specifically what's in that book. And if you wanted to access this book, what you would do is come down here to view ebook. We could have also done this from the side here with the view ebook button there. And we're going to go ahead and select that. And it will slowly open for us. Sometimes it takes a little time. And so this brings you directly to the book. And you'll look over on the left side and you'll see that here we do actually have all the chapters. So there's one chapter that's called Free Bobby. So that's probably something that would be really relevant for Bobby Seale. You also have this really neat option here where you can search within the text. So for example, let's just say I wanted to see how many times Bobby Seale's name shows up. 515, so a lot. Sometimes there's fewer results and you can actually go through each of them to see what's relevant. I wonder what happens if we put in, because part of what you're looking for is how your activist relates to those philosophies and leadership styles of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. So let's see what happens if we put in Malcolm X. So this looks like, so it's bringing up more results now because it's probably searching for each of these names, but it starts off because it's sorting it by relevance, showing us the results that show up that have their names in really close proximity. So this might be a really good way to get a better sense of how Bobby Seale's philosophies or leadership was impacted by Malcolm X and Malcolm X's murder. It looks like right there. It looks like if we scroll down, there's also some things about his autobiography. So a really interesting way that you can start to go for some of those relationships. You could also probably try searching Bobby Seale legacy and see if anything shows up here too. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our list here. I'm going to pop this out so we have it all showing up here. Now, when I have a list that's this short, I usually go ahead and go through each, it's only 4 items. So I go through and I look at each of the items here. And again, some of these, like in Plato's Cave, I'm not entirely sure how that relates, but often if you come in and go to the description, and actually I'm going to use a Control F so I can search this page and look for Bobby Seale. And it looks like right now, or right here, they have something about the Bobby Seale trial. So that's how that one's relating in there. It also looks like this Black Against Empire, the history and politics of the Black Panther Party. That one sounds like another one that might be really relevant too. So that's what I would do as you're going through these. Probably a lot of these people, you're only going to have a few results come up. So you might as well go through each of them. Once you find something that might work, First of all, it's always a good idea to jot down the title for yourself. You can also email the record to yourself, and I would highly recommend doing this. You could go ahead and just send it to yourself, and then once you get that email, it's going to have a link to always get you back to this book. You'll also see you could get a direct link to get back to this book if you wanted to save that in like a Word document or a Google document. And there's also an option here to cite. So I always like to do a bit of a caveat for this. They're a good spot to start for your citation, but you always want to compare it to an actual manual to make sure that it's doing things correctly. So for example, this insert missing service name, that is probably not supposed to be part of the citation, but some of the other pieces might be right. And so sometimes it's useful just to have that as a starting point for yourself. All right, so let's go ahead and go back and start to look for our articles. So what I'm going to have us do is I'm going to come over here to this McKillop Library. This is hyperlinked, so you can just select that and it brings you back to the home page. And I'm going to use our databases A through Z tool here. And you'll see once you pop in here, there's these different ways that you can filter the databases you're seeing. My favorite way is to go by subject. And you could come down here and go to history. And you'll see this comes up with 26 databases that are good for historical research. We're going to use America History and Life with full text, and that's the one that's here on the top. But there's a lot of other options here that you might want to try out. I mentioned Academic Search Complete in the PowerPoint. JSTOR might be another good option. So it's good to experiment with different ones. America History and Life tends to be my go-to first stop, though, when I'm doing American history. So I'm going to select that one. Now you'll see that once we pop in here, we're getting 3 different search bars. Often when I'm starting out in this database, I start out as basic as I can go. So in this case, I would just do Bobby Seale. And I like to see what results I'm getting first. And if I get hundreds of results, I know that's a good place where I might want to put in additional search terms. But if you're only getting, 30 results, you probably don't need to narrow down your search anymore by adding more terms. So let's press search here. All right, so you see that we have 20 results coming up. So that's not that many. Like I can go through 20 results, right? That's not going to take very long. But there are a couple things that I want to do because you'll see that some of the options that are coming up here are ones that aren't going to be acceptable resources for your research. So for example, this first one that says it's a periodical. Now, when the databases talk about periodicals, they're referring to usually a popular or a trade source. This is in History Today, so it's probably a popular source. You could probably find that at a newsstand. So what I want to do is come in and use my refining results features here on the left, because I don't need those things to show up that I couldn't even use for this paper, right? So if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there's an option to limit to just those academic journals. So I'm going to select that there. All right, so that brings me down to 13. And one other thing I like to do here is I want to also go ahead and exclude the book reviews. Now, we already looked at our ebooks. We know what's available here. So we don't really need to necessarily look for more books this way, especially since we're, off campus. So it's not like we can just request another book to come in for us. The library isn't open for that right now. So I'm going to exclude the book reviews. We'll see if there was any, actually. There wasn't. So I gave you a whole lecture about that for nothing, but at least you know now for the future. All right. So once you are in here, you'll see in the middle, you're getting all your results coming up, everything that's blue hyperlinked up on the top like this. These are the names of the articles. So one strategy when you get started like this, especially when you have 13 results, is just to go through all of them. And you can come over here and you'll see this little blue folder. You can add things to a folder. So you could go through and say, I'm just going to select everything that sounds potentially relevant. Pop them in that way. Once you're done with that, you could come up here to this folder. And you'll see all of the different articles popped in here. And you could email this folder to yourself. And this is, as you can see, it's going to include the PDF or the HTML full text whenever it's available too. So that's one strategy for getting started, especially if you don't have very long to look and you're just kind of starting to dig in with it in practice. Another strategy, of course, is that you could find specific articles that sound really interesting. Like, I think this New Panthers, Old Panthers, and the Politics of Black Nationalism in the United States sounds interesting and like it might be good for research on Bobby Seale. You can see his name's listed right here as a subject. So what we could do now is we could pop into this record. You can see that it's giving us the author's name. It's giving us other publication information. So Patterns of Prejudice is the journal this is coming from. Tells us the publication date. the page numbers that it's on. And if we scroll down here, we're going to see that there is an abstract for this article. So even just looking at the brief information that's provided here, if we think back to our PowerPoint and how we talked about evaluating sources, there's a decent amount of evaluation we could do here, not even having read the article. That doesn't mean that we don't want to continue evaluating as we read the article. We do. But you can make some quick judgments here. For example, you could Google the author. You could see what the author's credentials are. It could be a boy or a girl, so I'm not sure. So you could see where they're from, and you could see what type of research they've done. And that would be a good way to figure out, do they have the qualifications to publish on this topic? You could also look, this is published in 2010. So you could think about how the publication date impacts the research that you're doing. So in this case, it's 2010, so it's about 10 years old. So it's going to be probably showing you some of the legacies of Bobby Seale, right? That's, many decades to reflect upon his legacy there. And we could read the abstract here to figure out if we think this is going to be relevant for this research. So I can tell you, I've skimmed this before. It seems like it's probably going to be relevant. You don't want to judge that only on the abstract. You would definitely want to go and look at the full text, but you can make a quick judgment here that'll help you out as you're going through your sources. If you look on the right side, you're going to see these different tools that you can use to interact with this article. So here you could remove it from the folder or add it to the folder. We've done that on the previous page already. You could choose just to email this one article to yourself, so that's an option. This also has a cite option, so we could scroll down. I'm going to scroll down to, I need the Chicago Turabian Humanities. Well, it looks a little bit more correct than our book one did, at least. Although I'm not sure that's saying much. That book one was pretty inaccurate. And a couple other options that you have here on the right is one that I wanted to point out is this permalink here. I know some people like to get back to their articles just by saving the link to them. If you are that type of researcher, you want to go ahead and always save the permalink to them versus the URL that's like up above on onto the top of our screen. So what happens is the URL that's on the top of our screen, it's one of those really long URLs and it's subject to link rot. So over time, usually not even very much time, it kind of like decays. And so you can't get back to the source that you need to get back to. I once did some work with a student who had done several hours of research and she only saved those big long URLs. She didn't save any of the permalinks because she didn't know about them. And she tried the next day to get back to her sources and none of them were coming up. So she reached out to me and she asked, is there anything that I can do? How do I get back to my sources? And there was literally nothing that I could do for her. So she just had to redo all of her research in order to get her sources again. So I always like to tell that as a cautionary tale. Make sure that you save the permalink if you are the type of person who wants to use that link to get back to your sources. Now, if you wanted to access this immediately, you'll see on the left side here, this one actually has HTML full text. So if we select that, it's going to give us the full text just here it's at the very bottom of the page. If we're scrolling up, you can also see you can have this read to you and you can have it read to you in different accents. So if you want a British accent to read this article to you, you have that option. You can also access this as a PDF. So if we select that there, so you'll see that the article comes up right here. Again, it's giving us all the citation information that we would need at the top. And you could choose to print this over here on the right, or you could download it and save it to your computer as well, whichever worked easiest for you. So that's kind of how you navigate in there. The other thing I want to show you, given our current circumstances with remote learning, is I want to talk about if there's no PDF or HTML. So let's say, this one sounded kind of interesting too. There is no new Black Panther Party. So you can see this one doesn't have that PDF or the HTML. So what you do in this case is you do the find full text. And when you select this, it looks in other databases that we have at McKillop to see if we have full text. Now in this case, we don't. If we did, it would bring you to a page that would give you the full text. So in this case, you would have to request this through interlibrary loan. You'll see that the button's right here. So you would select that. It might have me log in. Yep. It's going to have you log in with your credentials. So it's just that first part of your Salve email address and then your Salve password. And then it brings you to this page that gives you all the information that was in that record. I do always like to double check this. So I usually pop back and forth between this record here, and then what's listed here for the record for this article. And I double check the author, the page numbers, because then when this goes to other schools to see if they'll scan in this article and send it to you, this would come directly to your email. They know exactly where to go for that. So you have this option here where you can say when you need the request from. I usually recommend putting a week to 2 weeks out. This is why you want to always do your research in advance. This doesn't mean that if you put 2 weeks out that they wait 2 weeks to get it to you. They still try to get it to you as soon as possible. But let's say that you wanted this by tomorrow. And if they didn't find it by tomorrow, they would just cancel your request because you said that you needed it before tomorrow. So that's why I always recommend that you give a little bit of time. Now, I do want to give kind of a little bit of a caveat here due to our hectic times because of COVID-19. There's probably a lot of researchers right now that are relying on interlibrary loan, particularly for articles, because a lot of libraries are closed right now for any physical books and items. So as you're doing your research, make sure to put in these requests as early as possible. And I would also recommend not relying solely upon interlibrary loan. So try to find a few backups that you can find in full text. Another place you might want to search is you could try Google Scholar as well. Sometimes actually, if I have articles like this that we don't have in the full text, I'll take the title and I'll search it in Google Scholar just to see if it has it available. And sometimes I actually look out, so it's always worth trying. You can always email me too and ask me if I know of any other places where it might be available. But I just don't rely only on interlibrary loan and then not have it come through and not have the research you need to do this assignment. You just want to make sure that you have your bases covered right now. All right, so we went over finding ebooks in the catalog, and we went over finding articles using America History and Life. And remember, a couple other places you might want to try if you're not seeing stuff in America History and Life is you could try Academic Search Complete. And Academic Search Complete, I'll actually just show you real quick. The nice thing about Academic Search Complete is it actually looks, you could actually search it at the same time as America History and Life. But Academic Search Complete actually looks the exact same as our America History and Life does. Let's just see what they have. So they have 59 things that are coming up. Let's see if we do scholarly journals. And so 15 that come up from scholarly journals. So this might be another way you'll see some of the stuff is the same. I'd probably expect that. But that could be worth trying as well if you're kind of hitting a dead end in America History and Life. All right, remember, you can always reach out to me. You have my email. I'm sending that with the worksheet for you. So the worksheet's what it's gonna have you do is practice finding an ebook and practice finding a couple articles. The worksheet also gives you an opportunity to give me feedback on if you're not finding anything, because if you're not finding anything, I'm going to leave some comments in there and be like, oh, maybe try this source, maybe try that one. I would just want to make sure that you're finding the sources that you need. So definitely put any questions that you still have on there as you're doing your practicing, and I'm going to get those back to you. All right. Well, best of luck with your research. I'm excited to hear about what you all find. This is a really interesting project. So best of luck.